Steph. Well, good morning. It's so good to be here with you. Just real quick, the book is A Million Little Ways. There was a book, A Million Little Things, written by that drug addict that was found out that he was lying the whole time, but he was on Oprah's book club and he got really famous. And then it turned out his story wasn't true. A Million Little Things. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? That's not the book I wrote. So anyway, just so you know. Well, I'm so glad to be here. This is my first time. Last year I wasn't able to come. And so it's so exciting to be in a room filled with writers and artists and creators and entrepreneurs who are figuring out how to do this thing we call, whatever it is we call what we do. So I love sort of making it up as we go along together and knowing that I'm not alone. Well, a couple of weeks ago, I go in to get my hair done, and I'm sitting in the hairdresser place, and my girl who cuts my hair, she wasn't quite ready for me. So I sat in the waiting room, and I had my phone, like you do, scrolling through Instagram, sort of as like the international sign of don't talk to me. So I sense a presence come in, and she comes in kind of like this, and she comes and she sits right next to me, even though all the other seats are empty. So she comes, she sits next to me, and she starts talking, because evidently she doesn't know the international sign for I don't want to talk, which is this. And so she starts talking, and it turns out she is 91 years old, and she had a riveting conversation going with me about hazelnut creamer. And how much she loved it, and how much her 4 sons and 1 daughter didn't love it, and how 2 of them are balding, but 1 of them is tall. So we went on, and I'm sort of listening and kind of sideways looking at her. And then at one point, she says something that was sort of interesting. So I turn and face her directly. So let's say it's you, you're her. So I'm gonna look at you. And I look at her directly. And when I did this, she, her eyes got big, and she went, "You have the devil within." I know y'all don't know me, but I can assure you I do not have the devil within. And I said, "Excuse me, I'm sorry, what?" And she said, and her face kind of changed. She's like, "You know the saying, dimple on your chin, devil within." Oh. Dimple on your chin, devil within. That is not a nice thing to say to someone who has a dimple on their chin. Oh my goodness. So I went home and looked it up to be like, is this a thing, or is she just wanting to give me a terrible words that I had to take with me? And I told her, I was like, I kind of don't like that saying. It's a little bit mean. I told her that. She said it's an Irish proverb, which it is. I looked it up. But here's the thing. When it comes to honing our own voice, some people would call it finding your voice. I'm today calling it uncovering your voice. The truth is you have a voice. It's there. Everyone has one. But we don't want our voice to sound like an Irish proverb, right? We don't want our voice to sound like, the puns or the cliches. In fact, we're always trying to work against that. And the truth is we already know how to sound mediocre. Every one of us knows exactly what to do. In fact, I'm going to give you some tips on what that looks like, sounding mediocre, but you don't need to write them down because you do it naturally, and so do I. And here is, okay, y'all, I have prayed over this thing. I clicked it once, and I'm aiming it at the back, and I'm going to click it like I have power. Clicked it. Yes. So here are 14 ways. Can you read it? I can't see it myself. Here are 14 ways to have a mediocre voice, and I might add to make mediocre art. Ready? The first one is make love to fear. Next, you want to make sure you apologize a lot. Say you're sorry for everything that you're making. You want to try to measure your impact. That one's really big. Try to measure it. Try to figure out if you're making an impact, having an influence. You want to wait to work. You want to wait until you feel qualified. Make sure you don't do anything before you feel qualified. That one's really important. The next one is you want to compare yourself to other people. Make sure you do that, because then you're really going to have an authentic voice. The next thing is you want to fear the success of others, because we all know there's not enough to go around, right? It's very scarce success. You have to, and when someone else succeeds, you need to be afraid. So that's important. Another thing is you want to keep impossible standards of perfection, because that's going to really help you have a really authentic voice. Have imaginary conversations with your critics in your head, especially at night before you go to bed. That's a good one. Also, hold on to regret. Rehearse your mistakes. Another one is stay comfortable. That's a good one for having a mediocre voice. The next one, I don't know if they're tricking me or if I'm really doing it. Demand appreciation. Make sure you're appreciated for what you're doing, because there's nothing like holding on to sour grapes to sort of make your voice come out and sound like you. Be really easily offended. That's a good one too. The next one is you want to make sure that you know that there's just one right way to do things, right? There's just one right way. And so your perfect voice is going to come out when you figure out what that one right way is. And by all means, don't take a risk. 14 ways to make mediocre art and have a mediocre voice are all of these things. And I guarantee you already know that because we've all experienced these. This list is in my book, A Million Little Ways, not things, ways. I brought it with me today. So that list is in the book, and I hate to share that list in a way, but at the same time, it's validating because you realize, oh, you mean that's not just me? I don't do that stuff. It's not just me. So I do want to share with you today 3 essential keys to uncover your voice. I could kind of say, just do the opposite of that and then go sit down. And that kind of is true. But I do want to share with you these 3 keys. Now, the thing about this is, there's more than 3 keys. It's not really the 3 keys, but these are mine. And the truth is, these are 3 keys for paying attention. Because it's not really 3 things that you have to go out and do to figure something out. No, it's more, I want you to get in the habit of staying within yourself and of paying attention to these 3 keys that I'm gonna share today with you. So the first one is frustration. Key 1 is frustration. And I have two proofs. There's way more than that, but I'm just going to share 2 reasons why frustration is the first key to find and hone and uncover your most authentic voice. And that comes first from a pastor by the name of Dallas Willard. He passed away several years ago. But before he did an interview with another pastor named John Ortberg. And I was watching this, it was Facebook one day, I'm scrolling through, ignoring what I should be doing, and I see this interview, and I start to watch it, and John asked, I'm going to quote what the actual quote was. John was asking Dallas some questions. It was a group of leaders, and they were doing this interview, and so John says, so how do we help people? Like if somebody wants to think about how their life is going, how do we help people ask and answer that question, how they're doing, how their spiritual life is doing, how they're doing? And Dallas's answer was, well, very slowly, one at a time, we listen to them. And I think the next thing is a question and not a statement. What's bothering you? Start there. And, John kind of made a joke. He said, well, that would be a really interesting liturgical question. Some churches have liturgy where the pastor says something and then the people respond, sort of like a responsive type of conversation. He said, that would be an interesting liturgical conversation. What's bothering you? And the people would respond, and also you. And so John laughs, and the people laughed like you did. And it can be heard at the very end of the video. Dallas says in a very quiet voice, he said, well, that would be absolutely revolutionary. What if what's bothering you was the most revolutionary question you could ask? I had to pause the video and think about it. Because I don't know about you, but I grew up having to push away what bothers me. I'm supposed to be nice. I'm supposed to, pay attention to what's like happy and what's great. And what's bothering me, I'm supposed to hide. But the truth is, finding your most authentic voice and honing it and becoming most fully yourself starts with what really gets under your skin. Pay attention to what bothers you. The second proof of that is from entrepreneur Seth Godin. Now, he's more than just an entrepreneur. He's like an author and a brilliant marketer and all of the many things. But the slide, I just put one. I just chose one, and he's got cool hair. So in an interview that Seth did with Jeff Goins, actually, I listened to several years ago, P.S. Does anyone ever, when you're trying to say Seth Godin and Jeff Goins, get it mixed up? And you say Seth Goins and Jeff Godin? Does that happen? Their names are so similar. Okay, anyway, so I was listening to this interview, and in one point I had to pause it and listen, and I'm going to quote what Seth says as in his conversation with Jeff. He was talking about writing books. He said, I don't wake up in the morning saying I need to write about something or owe the world a book. It's totally fine with me if I don't have anything. If I'm going to name something, or if I'm going to bother going to the year-long trouble of writing a book, it's because I'm frustrated. The only reason I do any of this is because no one else has done it in a way that I think is going to push an idea forward that I think is worth addressing, in the way I think is worth addressing. Pay attention to what frustrates you. because frustration is either going to shut you down or it's going to wake you up. And I think everyone in this room has been woken up by their own frustration, and you're starting to do something about it. That is where you're going to begin to hear, this is what I'm truly called to. This is where my sweet spot is. So that is the first key. The first key for uncovering your voice is frustration. And I'm going to think, if you want to think of it in pictures, I like to think in pictures. Think of it as frustration is like the kindling. It's like we've got our pile of wood here together. And so that is what the kindling is. It's what we're going to use to start this thing we call voice. So the next key is passion, key 2. Now, I won't stay here a lot because we kind of already know this one. I think we sort of know like what that is. I think anybody who comes to a conference like this is sort of familiar with the whole passion situation and what it takes to be passionate about something. I will give you one way that I know when I have a passion within me. And Carlos touched on it last night. And you remember how he talked about sitting on the sofa with his girls, and he was watching that commercial, and in 30 seconds before, he was not crying. And 30 seconds in, he was crying at this commercial. 30 seconds is all it took. I like to pay attention to what makes me cry. Why? Because I believe our tears are tiny messengers sent from the deepest part of who we are, carrying a sacred message. Here is where your heart beats strong. This is what makes you come alive. And I'm not necessarily talking about those tears you get when you're frustrated, or if you're someone who cries a lot, you're like, well, great, everything makes me come alive then, because I'm crying all the time. I'm crying right now. Here's the tears to pay attention to. It's the Carlos tears he talked about last night. It's the ones that kind of come up from the back and sort of sting, and you're like, where did that come from? This is not a situation where people cry. That's what you pay attention to. There's a hint in there somewhere. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, I never cry. That's not my hint. I think this one might even be more helpful for you, because people who don't cry a lot, the truth is you sometimes do. And every now and then, it might be once a year, but then you get to really pay attention. What was that once a year thing then? What was that? There's a hint there, pay attention. Your passion is hiding in there somewhere. That's key 2. Passion's the heat, passion's the fire, frustration's the kindling, passion's the fire. I think we have, yes, frustration, kindling, passion, heat. Okay, and that leads us to what do we need? We can't just have the kindling and the fire, but you have to have oxygen for a fire to burn. Key 3 is hope. It doesn't matter what you write about here. And I know not everyone in here writes about the same stuff I do. Thank goodness. We all have our own place in the world. But I don't care if you write about marketing or business coaching, or if you write fiction, or if you write memoir. We need people who write with hope. And I work with a guy, Brian Dixon, and he and I we have a membership site together with my family, which is a whole nother conversation we'll talk about at some point in life. But he is like marketing guru guy, right? And you would think like, well, that's not really a hopeful thing. That's just like, this is how you have to do it. It's like a how-to thing. It's listy. But Brian there's a sense of hope about him, that he still does his marketing thing, which some of you might know him, in a way that offers hope. And he's given me hope in the stuff that sometimes I think I'm not very good at. There's a way to do this with hope. Now, here is something that happens, because I've shared with you 3 keys, but the truth is that there are also some false formulas that we can fall into, because sometimes we might have 2 of these, but not the other one. And so I just want to share with you briefly what happens for me when I have 2, but not a 3rd. So let's say you have the frustration, you've got the kindling, something really bothers you, and you've got the passion. So you're like, I really am passionate about this. This is something that I really feel strongly about, but you don't have the hope. What's going to happen is that's going to turn into a cynical rant. If you look at the internet, you will discover that most people have found a cynical, ranty voice. It's still a voice. It's not like you can't have a voice without all these 3 keys. You have a voice, but is it the voice you really want? Is that the voice that you want to share? A cynical rant. For me, that sort of is represented on the internet for me, sort of like, we don't have any hopeful solutions here. We're just sort of saying things that bother us and things that we're really passionate about it, but there's no hope there. The next one, maybe let's say you have frustration and you have hope, but you don't have any passion. For me personally, this is my views on politics. So I'm not going to get into it, everyone, because I'm not passionate about it, so don't worry. But I'm frustrated about political things, and because I'm an eternal optimist, I have some hope about how, I'm hopeful, maybe is a better way to say it, but I don't have an ounce of passion, really, to be any type of activist. So if I'm running for something, you don't want to vote for me. Really, all that's going to come of my frustration and my hope in that situation is rote duty. I'm going to vote because #America, but I'm not going to go out and probably knock on doors and do the whole thing, because that's not really what I'm passionate about. Frustration and hope often can lead to rote duty. Is that the voice you want to have? Dutiful, I'm doing this because I have to, I'm doing this because it's the right thing. The third one is, let's say you have the passion and you have the hope. Can you see where this might be going? But there's no frustration. I call this one the Hallmark movie voice. It's kind of nice, and you're comfortable watching it on a Saturday night, but what it leads to is boring optimism. It's fine, and there's a tiny flame, and there's some air, but without the kindling, without the grit, it's just not going to burn long. So our job, really, these are important questions for us to ask about the work that we do, because there's plenty of things that frustrate me. There's plenty of things I have hope about. There's plenty of things that I'm passionate about. But until I have all three, I feel like when I find a spot where I have all of these three things working together, it's like the fire triangle is it Smokey the Bear? That doesn't sound right for me right now. Is that right? Smokey the Bear with the fire and the oxygen, heat, fuel. It's a chain reaction. It causes the fire. You need all of those for a fire to burn. And that's where I feel like we can find our sweet spot and the voice that we want to have and share with the world. Because the truth is, we want to influence people. We want to offer what we have as a gift to other people. And to me, I have found my sweetest spot to do that is when all three of these things work together. So these are the three essential keys to uncover your voice. I wanted to share with you as I close one place where this has come up recently. Now, again, it's this whole fire triangle. It comes up in not just the books that I write. It's not just the blog posts. It's not just the articles. It's in everything. It's in conversations. It's in Facebook posts. And recently, this came up for me in our Hope Writer community group. So Hope Writers is a site that I co-founded with Brian Dixon and my sister, who's also an author, Mike Roland Smith, and our dad, who is a first-time author. His first book comes out next summer. We all co-founded this membership site called Hope Writers. And we want to offer help and hope for writers who write about hope, because their writing helps people and we want to help them. And so this is a place where we have a private Facebook group where they are very active, and we love it because we can go in there, we know exactly what they're thinking. Well, something that's been really hot topic-y lately in our Hope Writers community is a lot of, it's mostly women, but there's some men too, but a lot of the women especially are really struggling with the whole concept of marketing and what they're calling self-promotion. Y'all, I talk about frustration. When I hear them say oh, I wrote this thing and I really think it's gonna help people, but I don't wanna share it because it feels really self-promote-y. I get so hot and bothered. So that frustration thing really kicks up in me, because here's the thing, and here's where it comes together. Hold on, I'm gonna find my final page of notes, and it's gonna be right here at the very end. I am frustrated because I want writers to share their work. That's my frustration. I see writers who aren't sharing their work because they're afraid, and I'm frustrated about that. I am passionate to keep writers writing. I think we have a generation of writers and artists. This is a really interesting time in the world that we have a generation of writers and artists, I think, who are not sharing what they have to offer because there's so many easy ways to share now, and it feels overwhelming. And that whole 14 ways to have mediocre art and have a mediocre voice, those things are haunting us. And so we're thinking well, I'm comparing myself to the others and everything's already been said, and who do I think I am and all of the things. And so we're not sharing, and I'm passionate about poking the sweet art awake in other artists and creatives because we need what you have to offer. And I could talk about this forever: frustration, passion, hope. I have hope for a generation of artists and creators and entrepreneurs who come fully alive on the inside so that they can share what's on the inside so that it can come out. And to me, that process, that's art. Whatever comes out as a result of that, that's the evidence. It could be a book, it could be a course, it could be a podcast. That's the evidence that art has happened because you have come alive and you've offered yourself as the person you most fully are as a gift. So there's my frustration, my passion, my hope, right? So I see this on Facebook and they're talking about it and it's making me crazy. And so what I do is, I don't know if you can read that, but what I do is I respond and I'm like, hey, dear hope writer, inviting people over to dinner is not self-promotion. Throwing a party and inviting people in is not self-promotion. Nobody would say that. Offering a gift is not self-promotion. I can't read the other ones because it's too blurry. But the whole point is that if you're a lifeguard and you're hired to save lives, you don't sit on the beach down on the sand because, I don't want to get up on the lifeguard stand because that would be too self-promoty. But you're there to save people's lives. So you better get up on that stand. And I know that you might be like, well, marketing and code is not really saving people's lives. But there's little parts that it kind of is. You're helping people, and it's so important. And so I just had to say, sharing your work is not self-promotion. With love, affection, and a little bit of fire. Emily, there you go. So it comes out in everything that you do. It's not just the big important things. So this is something that you can't fake. This is something that if you try to force it, we'll know it, your voice. If you try to rush it, we'll know it, and your words will drag their feet like a toddler at bedtime. We'll know, and we can see. So really the bottom line, the question is, as you're paying attention to, as you go through this weekend and you pay attention and you go home, where's my frustration? Where's my passion? Where's my hope? How do those intersect? And in what ways are those going to serve my person that I'm trying to serve? The bottom line question is, are you doing this from a place of fear, which was those 14 ways to have a mediocre voice, or are you doing this from a place of love? Fear or love? That's really what it comes down to, and no matter what kind of business you have. If you can do that from a place of love, Leslie Knope says thumbs up. I really wish we could vote for her for president. Before I give you the 3 questions that I want you to consider that I've already repeated, but I'm going to repeat again, I want to tell you where you can find me. I'm Emily P. Freeman on Twitter, Emily P. Freeman on Instagram, and my website is emilypfreeman.com. There is a P in there because there are 2 Emily Freeman authors, and one of them is not me. So I have a P. And then finally, our Hope Writers community, we do have a special gift for Tribe Conference attendees. I have an S on the tribes. It's hopewriters.com/either tribe or tribes. Either one will work. So I put tribes and then later realized, wait, it's just tribe. So if you go to either one, it will work. We have a special, you can join for 1 week for $1 and just try it out. It's worth just being nosy for $1, I think. Just seeing what it's all about. And if it's for you, and if not, you can always cancel. And if you don't cancel, then you're a member and you'll be charged monthly. Just read the fine print, just do that. But we would so love to have you there. So here's what we want you to do as you, I know Jeff's going to come and Marsha's going to come, but write down these questions someplace that you will have them. What is your frustration? What frustrates you? What bothers you? You can put it in the me. What frustrates me? What is my passion, or what am I passionate about? And as it relates to those 2, where do I see hope? Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.